Is Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari dream crumbling before it even gets off the ground? The 2025 season promised to be a rebirth for the Scuderia with the arrival of the 7-time world champion, but after just a few races, the outlook is already bleak. Disqualifications, infighting, technical failures, and now a bombshell straight from Hamilton's garage. What's really going on inside Ferrari? Stay until the end because today we're going to unravel the whole truth behind the chaos in Maranello and how this could change the immediate future of Formula One's most iconic team. And before we go any further, I want to know your opinion. Do you think Ferrari will be able to turn this situation around, or are we witnessing another lost year? Let me know in the comments. The start of the 2025 season for Ferrari promised to be a new era. The signing of Lewis Hamilton not only symbolized a commitment to experience and proven talent, but also a strategic move to restore the Scuderia's historic prestige. The SF-25 car was developed with a completely renewed philosophy, focused on maximizing ground effect and improving performance, which for years had lagged behind teams like Red Bull and, more recently, McLaren. At Maranello, the talk was of a more stable car, faster in mid-corner conditions, and with optimized traction. Simulations promised to approach the level of the leaders, and after winter testing, the impressions were encouraging. However, those expectations quickly met with a harsh reality. From the first race, it became clear that the SF-25 was suffering from significant structural problems, especially at the rear of the car. The technical team discovered that they could not operate the car at optimal ride heights to generate optimal downforce, which seriously compromised performance in qualifying and the race. Added to this was unpredictable braking and cornering behavior, symptoms of an imbalance between the suspension and the aerodynamic floor that no one at Ferrari expected after months of development. Faced with these problems, the Scuderia decided to bring forward its first major update of the year, a move that caused internal division. While the aerodynamics department pushed for immediate implementation of the improvements to the car's underbody and rear, technical director Loic Serra and Fred Vasseur himself preferred to wait until Miami, where the full package would make more sense in terms of data compression. However, the urgency to close the gap with McLaren, which already leads by more than 70 points in the Constructors' Championship, forced the decision to implement the updates in Bahrain. These updates included significant modifications to the Venturi channels, the diffuser, and the rear wing monopylon. The logic was simple. If the car couldn't run lower without sacrificing the regulations, then ways had to be found to optimize airflow with the available height. Lewis Hamilton publicly expressed hope. He declared that these improvements could provide that extra bit of downforce the car hadn't achieved until then. But behind the scenes, the pressure was brutal. Because if these updates didn't work, the risk of falling behind for the entire season increased exponentially. And this is where the story begins to unravel. Because the improvements implemented in Bahrain not only didn't solve all the problems, but they also led to a new series of technical complications that would later result in the controversial disqualification in China. The SF-25 still wasn't performing as expected. The uneven wear on the car's underbody, the problem with ride height management, and the inability to adapt to different track types revealed that the car, as conceived, had more limitations than strengths. At this point in the championship, it's no longer just a question of speed or strategy. The SF-25 is, in essence, a technical promise that has yet to be fulfilled. And for a team like Ferrari, burdened by the pressure of a legion of fans and the relentless gaze of the entire paddock, the margin for error has become non-existent. Everything that comes next will be under a microscope. Because the Hamilton-Ferrari project, which began as a dream, could soon become a case of frustration if the car doesn't take the leap everyone expected. The 2025 Chinese Grand Prix was set to be a turning point for Ferrari. After a shaky start to the opening rounds of the calendar, the team landed in Shanghai hoping to consolidate the SF-25's potential and confirm that the updates implemented in Bahrain could make a difference. And for much of the weekend, it seemed things were finally on track. In the sprint race, Lewis Hamilton shone with a solid performance that excited the fans. Charles Leclerc was also competitive, putting both cars in the fight for good points. But what happened after the checkered flag was an absolute nightmare for the Italian team. In a dramatic twist that no one expected, the FIA announced the disqualification of both drivers following post-race technical inspections. In Leclerc's case, his car was found to be under the minimum weight limit, 799 kilograms compared to the regulatory limit of 800 kilograms, a tiny infraction but enough for the stewards to act. Most alarming is that this difference was due to the replacement of the front wing following contact at the start. Although the performance difference achieved by this change was negligible, the rules are clear and there is no room for interpretation. But the worst was yet to come in Hamilton's case. The Briton's car was penalized for excessive wear on the floorboard, specifically in the area of the plank, the wooden board that regulates the minimum ride height. Measurements revealed that the thickness of the board on the number 44 SF-25 was less than the minimum allowed, 8.6 millimeters instead of the regulatory 9 millimeters. This means, in simple terms, that the car was running too low during the race, generating an undue aerodynamic advantage. At first glance, it seemed like a basic technical error, unbecoming of an elite team. But deeper doubts quickly began to emerge. Ferrari engineers, along with technical analysts and rivals, began to piece together what had happened. And what they found was disturbing. Pre-season simulations may have been insufficient to anticipate certain real-world dynamic conditions. Furthermore, the transition between the sprint and main race setups was not properly calibrated. The suspension system, key to managing car ride height, could have reacted unexpectedly to variables such as tire wear, fuel load, or even track temperature. This set of errors uncovered a systemic failure, not only in execution but also in concept. Car ride height management and ground wear control, two fundamental aspects in the ground effect era, were underestimated. What should have been a weekend of confirmation for Ferrari ended up being a public humiliation, a wound both technically and reputationally. The situation also exploded on the media front. Team principal Fred Vasseur didn't hide his frustration. While accepting technical responsibility for the errors, he harshly criticized FOM for the way they manipulated Hamilton's radio messages, creating a narrative of internal conflict where, he claimed, none existed. Selective clips showed Hamilton defying orders but omitted moments of cooperation, such as when he himself proposed letting Leclerc pass. For Vasseur, this was a media betrayal that further magnified the Shanghai disaster. But beyond what was said or left unsaid, what was clear is that Ferrari failed at the most essential point, complying with the technical regulations. And in a sport where the rules are the unwavering framework that governs every inch of performance, such errors are unacceptable for a team aiming to fight for titles. The disaster in China wasn't simply a lost race, it was a wake-up call for the entire Ferrari 2025 project. Because if these structural flaws aren't corrected immediately, not only will points be lost, but the whole course will be lost. The 2025 Japanese Grand Prix not only exposed the SF-25's technical limitations, but it was also the stage where the deepest internal tensions within Ferrari erupted publicly. The race at Suzuka, which on paper seemed like an opportunity for redemption after the disaster in China, ended up being a stark snapshot of a fragmented team, not only in terms of on-track performance, but also in philosophy, communication, and technical direction. We're not just talking about a car that isn't performing as expected. We're talking about a project that threatens to fracture from within. During the race, leaked radio messages revealed the level of frustration experienced by the drivers. Lewis Hamilton, visibly disconnected from his engineer, desperately requested precise data on where he was losing time to his rivals. The response was vague, turns 8, 9, 13, and 14, to which Hamilton responded calmly but clearly expressing his disappointment. Okay, but how much? It wasn't just a matter of strategy, it was a plea for quality technical information to be able to compete. This seemingly trivial scene revealed a serious problem: the disconnect between the most experienced driver on the grid and his technical team within Ferrari. At the same time, Charles Leclerc was experiencing his own disagreement. He was asked from the pit wall to adjust a specific engine brake setting, an order that was met with a blunt response. "Yeah, you told me, I don't do it for some reason." A response that completely broke the usual mold of the Monegasque, known for his measured tone and patience on the radio. What was happening at that moment wasn't a simple technical disagreement. It reflected an environment contaminated by frustration, mistrust, and the pressure of not living up to expectations. But the most shocking thing happened after the race, away from the cameras. According to internal sources, Charles Leclerc made an explosive statement to the team's top brass. He would no longer follow the technical line based on Hamilton's feedback. Simply put, Leclerc decided to break with the development philosophy centered on the seven-time world champion's recommendations and proposed taking his own path in setting up the car. This move, which was interpreted by many as a declaration of independence, shook the foundations of Ferrari's technical structure. Because what was once a unified strategy now became an internal competition to see who would impose their vision for the car. And this rupture occurred in a very delicate context. Ferrari, in Fred Vasseur's own words, is on the verge of entering a qualifying championship, where Saturdays could define the entire weekend. In that scenario, there's no room for misunderstandings or parallel experiments. But the problem is that neither Hamilton nor Leclerc seem to trust the other's approach anymore. The Briton recently arrived from Mercedes and with a work ethic that's meticulous, sees no significant progress on the technical side. Leclerc, for his part, feels that his driving style has been diluted and that the car doesn't respond to his needs. The two are on diverging paths, and the SF-25 is caught between two repelling philosophies. The problem isn't that there are differences. That's natural in a team with two competitive drivers. The problem is that those differences have become visible rifts, fueled by an environment that hasn't been able to unite them. Ferrari's management, far from channeling tensions into a common strategy, appears to be reacting late, lacking a clear plan to unify visions or strong technical leadership to impose order. Japan made it clear that Ferrari's real challenge is not just technical, it's structural, it's cultural. And if they fail to close that gap between their two stars, no matter how much is invested in the car, the team will continue to lose not due to a lack of speed, but due to a lack of cohesion. Because in modern Formula One, winning is no longer just a matter of having the fastest car, but the most solid project. And right now, Ferrari's project is on the verge of breaking in two. After analyzing everything that has happened in the first rounds of the 2025 calendar, what is happening at Ferrari cannot be understood simply as a bad run or a slow start. We are facing a crisis of identity and execution that threatens to derail one of the most ambitious projects of the Italian team's modern era. The signing of Lewis Hamilton represented a total commitment to the championship, a historic alliance between talent and legacy. But 3 races later, the landscape is marred by technical errors, questionable decisions, and an internal fracture that cannot be hidden. The SF-25, in theory, was supposed to be the evolution that would take Ferrari back to the top. But in practice, it has been a car plagued by structural problems that, far from being resolved with the initial updates, have exposed even more shortcomings in the correlation between the wind tunnel and the track, in the management of ride height, and in the effectiveness of downforce. And most worryingly, in the team's ability to interpret its own technical tools. The double disqualification in China wasn't just an isolated incident, but the direct consequence of a series of hasty decisions, simulation errors, and a lack of communication between departments. A disorganization that cannot be allowed in a team aiming to challenge for a world title. And if that was already serious, Japan only confirmed what many feared, that the team's internal cohesion is in jeopardy. The differences between Leclerc and Hamilton, far from being a personal conflict, reflect two visions of how Ferrari's technical project should evolve. And right now, rather than complementing each other, those visions are colliding. Leclerc no longer wants to follow a line imposed by Hamilton, and Hamilton is beginning to hint that he doesn't fully trust the technical team around him. Radio communications, post-race statements, and internal leaks leave no doubt. There is a fracture within the team. And the most alarming thing is that the Maranello management doesn't seem to have, for now, a clear strategy to manage this crossfire. All this is happening while McLaren is slipping away to the front, Red Bull is preparing its counterattack, and Mercedes is showing signs of recovery. The margin for error is minimal. And if Ferrari doesn't find a way to reorganize itself technically and structurally, the season could slip away before the mid-year break. Because it's not just about scoring points or winning races. It's about regaining control of a project that currently seems to be drifting. So the big question that remains is this: can Ferrari turn this situation around in time? Or are we seeing the start of another year marked by wasted opportunities and broken promises? Leave your opinion in the comments. Do you think Ferrari will be able to consolidate and resolve its internal conflicts? Or are we witnessing how, once again, the red giant stumbles over the same stones of the past? And if you're interested in following this technical and human drama unfolding in real time, be sure to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell.